I definitely want to make sure to invite Miss Diana. Come on down. Cool. So let's welcome out our artist. So we could come on out. Yeah, come on out. We're gonna have you introduce yourself. So if you could introduce yourself and your pronouns.
Okay, sure. Hi, my name is Devan Torres, and my pronouns are he, him, his, they, them, theirs.
Awesome. Next.
Hi, I'm Shen Heckel, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gabriella Rafiele, and I use feminine pronouns.
Awesome. So give it up for our trans actors and actresses and actresses. So we're going to go ahead and do 3 questions that will be applied to the panel. If you wish to answer the question, please just signal me and I'll pass over the mic to you. So first off, I wanted to talk to the panel about visibility for trans community and how important that is. This is the first time that I've seen so many trans and gender nonconforming people be part of Brown and Out. What does it feel like, and what is the significance it has for you to be able to be part of theater, especially in a place like the East Side?
Hi, everybody. So for me, when I've always been, in acting and all that, and one of the fears that I had, like before I started my transition, was like, am I going to be able to act anymore? This is like something so important to me. And, it hasn't been long since I transitioned, but finding this place and then getting, to actually act and knowing that there's, 2 others like me here on the cast, it is very special to me. And it's just, it touches my heart because I'm like, I can actually be myself and do what I've always dreamed of doing. So thank you guys.
Anybody else?
Is this on anyway? No, so.
So you won't hear it through the chamber, but it's
Oh, got you. Okay. No, so last year when I was doing Brown and Out, I was the only, as far as I knew, trans non-binary person that was on the cast. And it felt like I felt like safe in this space, but I also felt alone. You know what I mean? And so this year, like definitely for my piece Omens, I wanted to make sure that my characters were written as trans non-binary people. Like that's who they were supposed to be. And so I wanted to make sure that we had that representation here, So now seeing this representation and like even Lady Diana being in the writing process with like, it was just so like, yes, I'm not by myself. Like this is amazing. So yeah, it was really like, I was overwhelmed with like complete joy and just like, okay, I'm going to cry, but it's okay. Like, so yeah. Did you want to say
something? For me, I work majority behind the stage, director, producer, and a lot of the time, my gender identity doesn't come up, and people either know I'm trans or they don't, and that's how I kind of walk through my professional experience. But when I heard that Brown and Out was looking for trans actors specifically, I was like, you know what? It's been a while since I've been on stage, but it looks like they want representation, and I'm both brown and trans, so so that's why I became a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then I'm gonna transition us into some very like specific questions. So Diana, tacos and tacones. Why tacos and tacones? What part of that story? What inspired you?
Actually, the original title of my play was called Puta Siempre, Pendeja Nunca. But they said it was too vulgar, so I changed it to Tacos y Tacones. And it took a while. Yes. But it was, it took a while for me to actually volunteer and join this playwright class because I'm anti-commitment, and they said you have to commit for 10 weeks every Tuesday from 7 to 10. I've never committed to a man, much less a playwriting class. And so I thought, well, let me give it a try. I had just started a new job, and I just needed a little bit of an artistic outlet. And so they said, our playwright directors will say, just write what you know. And I go, well, I used to be a puta back in the day, right? And I had a lot of stories with my coworkers on the streets. And so let me write about some of the adventures or some of the conversations that we used to entertain on Santa Monica Boulevard, right? And I was the dreamer and the hopeless romantic on the boulevard. And a lot of my colleagues on the street were very just jaded and tough and like, hey, this is all about business. Like we can't, afford to catch feelings, right? We have to always be vigilant and be on guard. And I was always the dreamer. And so I wanted to kind of share a story that was led by a trans brown woman, right? Because we don't get to sometimes hear in plays or in television or in films about our stories. And I think we have beautiful stories, impactful, powerful stories that really are about humanizing us as a community, right? And I wanted to share a story that touches some of the hearts and souls of people and change some of the minds. And so when I wrote Tacos y Tacones, I wanted, a cast full of trans people, trans women, Latina, but then also wanted one Latina who was cisgender, right? And she didn't get a lot of the positive feedback and energy from her own sisters. And it took an older taquera lady, cisgender, who happened to kind of give her words of wisdom and kind of give her the oomph that she needed in order to continue on her life. And so this is actually the first story of hopefully many stories to follow, because now I'm envisioning maybe a Netflix series after this. And hopefully this is just a spark of what's to come later down the road.
So the characters that I wrote, like Shen plays Che, and Che is myself. I also identify as a two-spirit person to pay homage to my ancestors. And so, for me, I don't know, like it was so hard to even watch what I had just written. It just to watch the rape scene, just to watch like this happening not only to Coco but like to all the women, you know what I mean, and to like to our people. This is what happened. She represents so much more, you know. She represents the religion that we lost and the language that we lost and all these things that we were losing to these men, you know. So so I don't know where I want to go from here, but I know I'm a little afraid to, but yeah, we'll see where that goes.
Anything else that you would probably like to share around specifically what inspired Omen?
Sure. So within the past year, I had been having more indigenous friends and going out to more indigenous events, and just these people, I felt at home immediately, and I felt like I'm missing something, and this is what I was missing. And so I had these like images come to my head, and like these stories that were being told of like, oh, this is what happened to me, or this is what my grandma used to tell me, or these things. And I was like, let me put these stories together. Let me make something like this. And then I also had to think about myself, like I think I would be a shaman in my previous lives. You know what I mean? And so I just put everything together, and it came out beautiful to me. You know, and the stars at the end, when you see the stars, it's supposed to represent all the stars that we see every night, and that we can reach our ancestors at any time if we just look up. You know, and so don't forget that, how close they are, and they're never too far if you just look within yourself. So.
So my question to you is, you said you were behind the scenes, right? What does it feel like to be up front and be front and center and be interpreting these characters? And how has that journey been for you?
It's been a lot of fun. It's definitely different. Like I said, I'm very much a tech heavy kind of person. I know light design and set design and all of this, and so for once I got to kind of turn that off and focus solely on the character. What was special about this, and Gabriella knows this, is because it's been about 8 years or so since I actually acted. This was the first real time that I got to play male roles, and that was very special. I got to, especially for To Rock It With Love, you know, that wasn't about my trans identity. That was about me being a man and having my heart broken as a man, and that was very important to me.
So I definitely don't want it to fall on deaf ears, and I wanted to go dig a little deeper before moving forward. Is, what did it mean to you? So many times we get either there's people casted that are cisgender to play trans roles, right? There's also, we're not casted unless it's a trans role, and there's not many. So it seems like we want to come back and that be the question for the panel. That'll be the last question, right? What are your thoughts on this? For yourself, you mentioned, and it was so impactful to me to see and to hear you say, you've always been acting, and to be able to transition and still be in the profession you have a passion for. Not having to leave it behind, not having to lose part of your spirit and your soul. you mentioned a little bit about what it felt like for you, but how important is that are these spaces to continue to be available and created, and how do you want to create those for others in the future?
Sorry, guys, I'm getting emotional now. This was so important to me because, as Shen mentioned, also, this was the first time that I got to act in female roles, you know, and not all of them were on my transness. Some of them I played cis women, and I thought that was just amazing because it just felt so liberating, and it just felt so genuine and real. It was just amazing, and that's why sorry, you know, spaces like these are important because I couldn't have I don't think I could have picked a better place to start my career as an actress, you know, as a woman, as like this theater in this environment with feeling safe and knowing that, you know, if something slips out, you know, it's okay. You know what I mean? Well, yeah. So yeah, and you know, I want to be able to create those spaces because there are so many trans people out there, and just not maybe not even trans people, but just people that feel so different, and they feel like they can't live their dreams out fully because they feel trapped on the inside, you know? And just to be able to create a space like this to where people can be themselves and shine and work on their craft and perfect it, I think that is just like my mission in life. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned, the last question I wanted to pose to the panel before asking a question for the production crew for Brown and Out was particularly about the thought process, or what would you like to claim for our community within the acting profession, within the industry, the entertainment industry. We do see our stories either hijacked, quite frankly, by people who are not of trans experience, transposed, money's made, and it doesn't come back, right? Or we see trans people casted, and there's someone of cis experience playing it, or we're always typecasted into trans roles only. So I know that's a lot. Whichever part you want to pick out and you feel passionate about, we could start back going that way.
Okay. So for me, I think it's so important just because of what, you know, everything I said. It's important to create those like safe places for people to kind of flourish. You know, speaking on whenever cisgender people take on roles as a trans person, you know, some of them try to do it with respect and things like that. But for me, it's like you're just taking something that could help somebody out, you know, help someone like me to be able to work on their craft and work on their art. So, and I want to say this to everyone, you know, if we don't have limits in our minds, then we can go forth and do it, you know, and that's how I'm taking it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be taking them cisgender roles. Like, you know, that's how we have to think, because no one's going to hand anything to us. We have to take it. And that's why spaces like this are important, because we're doing our own thing. And the more we support each other and the more we get, you know, things going, and that's where our voice will be heard the most.
That's a complicated question. I'm a little bit of the belief that up until now, having cisgender people playing trans roles was actually kind of important, because it gave an introduction into our experiences. It gave a safe place for cis people to go, oh, wait, I know that actor, let me hear this story. But now I think we've had enough time of that, and now is the time to hear it straight from the mouth, straight from transgender people that have these experiences. So I'm happy to be a part of that, whether it's, you know, backstage or on stage or in front of the camera or behind the camera. You know, now's the time to make that shift.
So I just want to say that Gabby said everything I was gonna say, and so did Shen. But I do just want to also say that I really want to continue making these spaces for people. I do really plan on being a director in my life, and so like I know for sure I want to focus on having like trans, non-binary, all just types of queerness in everything that I do from this point forward in all my work. So that's how it affects me too.
I think I'm the oldest one on the panel, and I grew up in a small rural town outside of Fresno, and so and we were having this conversation earlier today, in a childhood that was very traumatizing, abusive, dysfunctional, chaotic, which is, I think, just the laboratory of just amazing storytelling. And you add trans to it, and then you add your Chicanaism to it, and then you add poverty to it, and you add my mom's immigration story, and then all her relationships, and all of us have different dads, and then me struggling to come to Los Angeles and trying to find my dreams and fall in love. I think, as Latinos or Latinx people, we just are really resilient, and we have a lot of strengths that sometimes, because of society, it tells us that we are less than or inadequate or second-class citizens, specifically in this political times that we're in, right? And I think more than ever, it's crucially important to making sure that our stories are not lost, and our stories are told by us, by brown folks, right, who identify as trans and gender non-binary. And I agree with Shen that I think we've seen enough of the introductions of trans people being played by cisgender for the past, I don't know, almost 10 years, and now it's really our time to go ahead and carve out our own destiny. And we can't wait for the white person, we can't wait for the cisgender person to go ahead and say, oh yeah, we're going to go ahead and give you all the tools and the resources you need in order to go ahead and flourish and be storytellers. We actually need to demand that, and we need to revolutionize ourselves, and we need to rebel against the Hollywood system that continues to crank out our stories, and us continue to be impoverished, oppressed, marginalized, and forgotten. And I think Brown and Out is one of those incubations that we're able to kind of flourish and start. So I wanted to thank, the people from Brown and Out, so the original, creator of that, Josefina, who's just came into the room. So thank you so very much. Who I think really exemplifies true cisgender allyship. And allyship is not about like, oh yeah, lip service, but actually rolling up your sleeves and actually doing the work and creating spaces so we can go ahead and share our stories. I wanted to thank Abel and Matthew. Matthew and Abel actually had the original thought to say, you know what, we think Tacos y Tacones is a wonderful play. Let's create it into a short film, right? And they asked me to be the main actress, right? And I had no experience acting, so this is my acting debut, so I apologize. But secretly, ever since I was 7 years old, I fell in love with laughter, and I was a child of the 70s and the 80s, and I would watch these sitcoms, The Jeffersons, and then All in the Family, and Laverne and Shirley, and just people would make me laugh. And in a crazy childhood that I had, laughter was my huge medicine, right? And I said, one of these days, I'm going to be in television. One of these days, I'm going to make people laugh, and I'm going to uplift somebody, right? And so having this experience has been a 40-plus year dream of mine. And so I thank Brown and Out for creating the spaces, because I don't think I would have had the courage or the bravery to share my story and be authentic and share a vulnerable piece of my life. Being a street-based sex worker, being incarcerated, being physically, sexually assaulted, and all the stories that sometimes as us as trans women we have to go through in order to survive, right? And I'm now in a moment in my life where I'm thriving and I'm able to give back to my community. And so I think it's hugely important that we continue to uplift each other and continue tonight. And as Latinx people, tenemos la fuerza para seguir con todos nuestros sueños. And I think it's really, really important that we just continue to bring each other together, build community, bring sister and brotherhood or siblinghood, and making sure that we are telling our stories. We are leading the next generation of storytellers, directors, and producers. And so I see myself now creating more stories, being a director, because I like to be in control and be a boss, right? I want to open up my own productions called Sucia Productions, right? I think now with this artistic bug that I have, I imagine myself doing so many amazing things for my community. And so just continue to be on the lookout for Lady Diane to come, okay?
So to close out, I did want to bring Abel and Josefina up to the stage really quick. And my last question is for Abel and Josefina. So my commitment as an individual who's dedicated her life and taken a vow of service to my community is to continue to seek funding opportunities to be able to create and support spaces for trans people to thrive. So my question to Josefina and Abel are what is the continued commitment to being in partnership with trans community, and what do you envision?
Well, like you said, we need funding, right? Because I would love for this to continue, but not only continue as a festival, but to eventually become its own theater company. You know, years ago, I've been, mentoring people to say, well, we need leaders, because we shouldn't just have it, once a year where we get to be okay being trans people or being just our real selves. It'd be great to have a theater company that explores sexuality, creativity, and full human self-expression all year round, right? And I know you're working on a musical, and so I've been mentoring you as a writer. I've been mentoring a lot of different people, but we do need funding. So if you have sources, for your musical, for instance, because it's going to be amazing, please help us, because, Casa just barely gets by. We barely get by, and we really do the kinds of stories that nobody else will do. Oftentimes I've had a lot of fights with my husband, who's the executive director, because he says, look, it doesn't make any money. And I go, I know, but we still have to tell these stories. It's like nobody wanted to produce Real Women Have Curves in Los Angeles, right? That's why I took up producing, because nobody wanted to produce a hit play because it was about Latinos in Los Angeles years ago. So I said, so we have to find a way to tell these stories, even if it don't make money, because eventually when enough of the community comes to support, it will not only make money, but it'll make a difference in the world, and that's what we're about. Do you want to say something?
Thank you. I think the most important thing is, we talk LGBTQI. I'm only the G in it, and I know the G experience. I mean, I can say that as a young gay man, I learned a lot of about life and who I was because of very special trans women who were in my life. But I can't tell their story the way a trans person can tell their story. I can't tell the story of a lesbiana from East LA. I can't be. I can write one. But it's not gonna ring as authentic as when it's coming from that voice of experience. And we need to continue to cultivate that, and we need to find the funding, because if we're gonna sit around and wait for some production company with money to fund our projects, well, we're gonna become relics, and our stories are gonna become relics, and they're just gonna go by the wayside. So again, if you do have the resources, or someone, or especially in the Latino community, we need to. I often tell people in the Latino community, we don't have an Oprah Winfrey. We don't have a Beyonce and Jay-Z. But there's an Oprah Winfrey and a Beyonce and Jay-Z because there was a Motown, because there was a Dorothy Dandridge, because there was a Sidney Poitier. All of these people from the black community were able to open doors so that later on, but it's time that Latinos, we start doing that. I mean, we're 70% of the people here, of the population here in Los Angeles, 70% Latino. And where's the representation? And I always hear people say, diversity, inclusion. It makes those words just become a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal if there is no representation behind that. So continue to support Brown and Out, of course, and continue to support projects that really push the narrative, that really give a voice to people who have not had the opportunity to give the voice. One last thing before I go. When Pose came out last year, people were like, the acting's not that great, but at least it's being told. And sometimes I hear that, oh, well, it's just in a small theater. Why would I go support that? I want to go to the Pantages. Well, girl, go to the Pantages, but if you got money to go to the Pantages, you got money to come to Casa too. So that's what I want to tell people is support in any way that you can, and we will see this revolution really take place and become just a part of who we are as a gente.
Thank you both. So last thing, as you go out, please have conversations. Please make sure that the visibility and the work of the talented trans and gender nonconforming people who have been part of Brown and Out doesn't just go beyond this. I mean, does go beyond the walls of this theater. Also know that you can hire, love, and house trans people. Those are three major issues that are impacting our lives. So as you go forth, if you have the ability to hire a trans person, you're going to get some hard-ass working people that are super talented. Number two, loving on trans people means you're loving on yourself. We are part of you, you are part of us, and together we're us. Housing trans people is super important. It allows us to be able to keep our head above water and go beyond survive to thrive. Not that we need saving, because we've created our own fucking existence. Let me make that clear. We do not need saving. But that is one of the major issues impacting our lives in general. So thank you very much. I see you. I celebrate you. Thank you for being part of me and love you. Thank you very much. Have a great night.